Premier League season has kicked off, but the Enzo Fernandez transfer saga still rumbles on. In today's video, we'll be discussing on how this Enzo Fernandez transfer saga is going to change the Premier League. The latest information we have is that Manchester City are still keen on signing Enzo Fernandez from Chelsea. However, if the deal is to happen, it would depend on two key factors. First, if Chelsea could get the right price, and second, if Chelsea could get the right replacement. This leads us nicely to point number one, that the Premier League clubs mean business. Now, in this summer's transfer window, we have seen some unbelievable transfers happen. Morgan Rogers to Chelsea for £117 million, Bruno Guimaraes from Newcastle to Arsenal for £75 million, Yuri Tillemans from Aston Villa to Manchester United for £35 million, just to name a few transfers. But we've also seen some incredible rejections. Sunderland rejected two proposals from Chelsea for their player in Granit Xhaka, a player that Xabi Alonso clearly knows well from his time at Bayer Leverkusen. We've seen Crystal Palace ignore and reject inquiries for their midfielder in Adam Wharton. We've seen Bournemouth reject a £64 million bid for their midfielder in Alex Scott. Why is all this happening, you ask? Well, the Premier League is on the rise financially. The top six clubs are also on the rise financially, but it's not just the top six clubs. It's the non-top six clubs as well who are making some significant gains in the transfer market. It's not just clubs like Chelsea, Arsenal, Manchester United, to name a few. Some of the non-top six clubs over the years, likes of Arsenal, Aston Villa, sorry, not Arsenal. I wish it could be Arsenal. Likes of Aston Villa, Brighton, Brentford, Bournemouth have all started to play in European competitions, so they have significant gains. They don't need to necessarily sell their star players to generate income. There's enough money in sponsorship deals, there's enough money in the TV deals, so they don't need to sell their best players for £100 million. This is where Enzo Fernandez and Chelsea come into the picture. If Enzo Fernandez goes to Manchester City, Chelsea will need to sign a replacement, and the two names on their list are Alex Scott and Adam Wharton. Now, I can imagine if Chelsea submit a bid for any one of these players, it would definitely be in excess of £90 million. Is that a fee that Chelsea would be comfortable paying at this stage of the window? I don't think so. Now, this leads us to point number two. Point number two being that bigger players and bigger agencies are always a match made in heaven. Now, the transfer business is a very ruthless place for Premier League transfers. Not just Premier League transfers, football transfers in general is very, very ruthless. Now, it's not just about player A moving from club A to club B or player B moving from club A to club C. It's just much more than that. It's the agents who make these deals happen. And football has always seen some top agents/agencies. We've seen agents like Jorge Mendes, a Portuguese super agent with some of the most elite names in the game, likes of Lamine Yamal from Barcelona, Pedro Neto, Vitinha, Cristiano Ronaldo, just to name a few. We've seen women football agents, which is also great for the sport. We've seen agents like Rafaela Pimenta, who is an agent of Erling Haaland and Phil Foden, and we've seen some other agencies as well, likes of Roof Agency, which is an incredible agency. They have some top talents, likes of Serge Gnabry, Virgil van Dijk, so many players. They have Kai Havertz. They also have, they have a lot of top players in Roof Agency. And there's also Rock Nation Sports, which manages players like Romelu Lukaku and Yan Diomande, who's transferred from RB Leipzig to Real Madrid. So top players and top agencies is always a match made in heaven. Now, in Enzo Fernandez's case, things are a little different. Enzo Fernandez's agent is Javier Pastore. Now, Javier Pastore was a fantastic football player, and he's a new agent in this transfer business, but he's not an agent with a great deal of maturity and responsibility. Now, why do I say this? Have a look at some of the lists of clients that Javier Pastore represents, and you can see that the most high-profile client on this list is Enzo Fernandez, and for very good reason. Javier Pastore is not the most mature agent. Now, in the months of March, April, and May, these are the three critical months where the relationship between Enzo Fernandez and Chelsea really broke down, and there's a really good reason behind this. Now, it's not just Javier Pastore's fault. Enzo Fernandez is also equally responsible. Now, Enzo Fernandez and Javier Pastore were giving interviews talking about how amazing it would be for Enzo to live in Madrid and how he dreams of playing for Real Madrid and how Chelsea have not really offered him the deal that he wants. Now, there's a way of doing this. A lot of clubs and a lot of agents and a lot of players often speak in the media about their dissatisfaction or often talk about clubs that they would one day like to play at. But there's a way of doing this, and there's a subtle way of doing things, which Enzo and his agent clearly have not followed. And because of that, because of these mistakes that they made, Real Madrid have publicly rejected the move for Enzo Fernandez. Real Madrid came out with a very interesting statement saying that they have no interest in signing Enzo Fernandez. He's a player that they respect because of his unbelievable qualities, his excellent qualities, and that the club has a fantastic relationship with Chelsea. Now, football relationships between clubs is a very important factor. Chelsea and Real Madrid is one of the strongest football relationships. These two clubs have done some incredible business over the years. Chelsea have signed players from Real Madrid, likes of Alvaro Morata, Mateo Kovacic, and have also sold players to Real Madrid, likes of Eden Hazard and Marco Correa, as recently as this summer. So was it Enzo Fernandez or was it his agent which really jeopardized his move to Real Madrid? I think it's a combination of both, but Javier Pastore, being his agent, should have guided his client better. And now we could see another interesting thing happen in the Premier League. We could see a lot of selling clubs put release clauses on their star players' contracts. Now we see a lot of this in Spain and Portugal. We've seen this with Athletic Bilbao. I think they're the best example of release clauses. We have seen them put some enormous release clauses on the players, likes of Nico Williams, a player that should be playing for Barcelona. A player like Nico Williams' quality should be playing at a higher level, but unfortunately he's still at Athletic Bilbao, and for very good reason. Nico Williams has a very high release clause which most clubs do not want to pay. Another example of high release clauses is Kepa Arrizabalaga. Now, when Arrizabalaga was at Athletic Bilbao, Chelsea paid £71.6 million to break his release clause and to sign him from Athletic Bilbao. Clubs in Portugal also have something similar. Clubs like Benfica often put enormous release clauses on the players, making it incredibly difficult for the other clubs to sign the player. Benfica did this with Enzo Fernandez. There was a £106 million release clause when Enzo was still playing for Benfica, and Chelsea paid that release clause to sign him from Benfica. So we could see a few Premier League clubs do this. We could see the likes of Bournemouth, we could see the likes of Brentford, Brighton, and many more clubs do this. Now, there are a few advantages to having a release clause. When clubs put a release clause on their players, that means that there is an amount, there is a fixed amount that the other club knows about, and then the negotiations begin. Now, release clauses often don't mean that the club have to pay the fixed fee. It means that the fee can be discussed and negotiated based on the transfer value. Now, in some cases, if a transfer value is £120 million, it does not mean that the club is going to pay £120 million directly. They could pay maybe £80 million first, then they could pay another £20 million based on performance-based clauses. So a release clause is also a good way of the clubs negotiating the structure of the transfers. If you liked today's video, please like, comment, and subscribe. And do you think Chelsea should sell Enzo Fernandez for more or for lower than £120 million? If I could give my honest opinion, after seeing Elliot Anderson go to Manchester City for £116 million, I definitely think Chelsea should demand at least £130 million from Manchester City. Thank you.